Gröna Lund is a boardwalk amusement park located in Stockholm, Sweden. And right off the bat, I'm going to say this was probably the most unique park that I visited in Europe. And by unique, I mean it was so drastically different from every other park we visited. As I mentioned, this is an amusement park, not a theme park. All of the rides are smushed into this very compact space. The park is layered into levels. So many of these rides are almost stacked on top of each other. This park really proves that when you have something so limited, such as space, it really brings out the creativity, because then you have to figure out how you can fit everything in. And after visiting here, it amazed me that the park is even planning on building a B&M invert in the future. I could not believe that they found the space to put one in. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is talking about my full experience at the place, what were my favorite rides, what were ones maybe I wasn't as big of a fan of, pros and cons, all of that, so that if you get the chance to visit, you can know what to expect. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the location, because this park is in downtown. It is also pretty much on an island. The park is surrounded by water, you have to take a bridge to get there, and you can't even park next to the park. So like when we visited, we had to park about a mile away and then walk. They did have some public transit that can drop you off pretty close, but what we saw was most people were just walking. Luckily, it is in the heart of downtown, so it's very easy to see some of the sights and cool architecture and buildings and visit the park. We actually found the park on accident because we wanted to see some cool buildings, and then we're like, oh look, there's Gröna Lund over there. And as you're walking to the park, you'll pass a lot of other touristy attractions. They have an ABBA museum right next door to Gröna Lund. It's like, what? It's crazy. So location is absolutely beautiful, and in general, I would say Gröna Lund has a lot of charm. Because even though there isn't theming, the park has just so much character. Presentation-wise, it is excellent, because you don't have to have theming in order to make a park look good. And they make sure that Gröna Lund just looks nice. And as with parks like this, there's always something to look at. Everywhere you turn, there's another ride, there's another roller coaster. It's so easy to film multiple rides going at the same time. And one thing that I would have loved to have done is see this park at night. Gröna Lund was open until 11 p.m. when we visited, however, we did not stay long enough for it to get dark, but it would have been really neat to see this park at night. I bet it would have been awesome. Now, I will say, my experience at Gröna Lund was a little interesting because we accidentally visited Gröna Lund on a Swedish national holiday. We did not know that going in. So, as a result, the park was packed. Probably the most crowded park we visited in Europe. Maybe not necessarily in number of people, but because the park is not that big, it just felt stuffed. The midways were shoulder to shoulder at times. All of the coasters had a longer line. So, unfortunately, I didn't get to do everything I would have wanted. The park has this really awesome funhouse walkthrough, and unfortunately, I didn't get to do it. I've heard from several people that that is the best thing at Gröna Lund, and unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to try it out. I feel terrible, and I feel like a horrible person because of that. But it was so busy. I was prioritizing the roller coasters, getting all those done, and some of the crazy flat rides. I really wish I got a chance to do it. And looking back, that was one of my regrets with this park. Now, talking about the roller coasters, you do have some notable ones, such as Insane, which is an Intamin Zack spin. I didn't particularly care for it, but not necessarily because of the ride. I'm just not a fan of that style of roller coaster. I know some members of my group really enjoyed it, and I have done Green Lantern at Magic Mountain, and even I'll say Insane is definitely better than Green Lantern was. My favorite coaster in the park was Jetline, their Schwarzkopf. That was really cool because it had a tunnel. I thought the second drop was better than the first drop. There are lots of helixes. They also have a gravity group wooden roller coaster, Twister. I thought it was pretty tame, felt like a family ride to me, but still very good use of space. They had some kiddie coasters, one of which was almost like a kiddie Wild Mouse. It was so weird. It was this long train just going through switchbacks. Very different. And they also had a suspended roller coaster. That was probably the longest line I waited in all day was for that ride. So I wouldn't say in particular any of the roller coasters were like world class. They were solid, they were fun rides, but nothing to like shout at. I don't know too many people who will go to Gröna Lund because they say, I want to ride that ride in particular. You know, like kind of how people will go to Kolmaren just for Wildfire. I don't know anyone would go to Gröna Lund just so that they could ride Jetline per se. Now that may change when they add their B&M invert in the future. And just the fact that they're getting that makes me want to go back here, especially then so I could do that and the walkthrough and hopefully experience the park on a lighter day. Another cool thing about Gröna Lund is they have 3 different drop towers. They have an Intamin Giant Drop, an S&S drop tower, and a fun time drop tower that tilts you forward. Think Falcon's Fury, but instead of having seats on all sides, it is one tower with a row of seats. And I love those things. I mean, I had done Falcon's Fury before, so I knew what to expect. I think you could make an argument that this one is better than Falcon's Fury. It's so cool. It was honestly probably my favorite ride at Gröna Lund. It's so neat, and I think that I can understand why Gröna Lund has so many tower rides. It's because of space. The ride is just built upwards, so they're able to fit it in so easy. And some of those rides that you have to go up to like a second floor of a building to access it because the ride is like on a roof. It's things like that that are crazy. It's like what I mentioned at the beginning. The entire park is built up into layers, so be prepared to go up some stairs at times. One thing I thought was kind of cool is whenever there are stairs, they have a stroller ramp next to them. It's because there were a lot of families with young kids here, and so if you bring a stroller, if you want to get them up to the stairs, there isn't like a side separate ramp, like kind of like what you'll have here in America. Here, there are two almost rails that run along next to the stairs that you put the wheels on and just wheel it down or up the stairs. It's crazy. Another thing I thought was really cool about Gröna Lund is just how much history is here. You'll find at times lots of billboards or old historic pictures talking about the park in the past. What's neat about Twister, the ride is almost themed to other roller coasters because in the queue line, they'll have pictures of famous roller coasters around the world, and that kind of entertained us in line because as we would go through, we'd see the different roller coasters and be like, yep, I've been on that one, I've been on that one, oh, haven't gone to that one yet. You know, that kind of thing. It was awesome. I did have one meal while I was at Gröna Lund. It was at this nice sit-down restaurant. It was probably one of the best meals I've had at a theme park. And it was nice to see that Gröna Lund had some options because most of the time when you think of a seaside boardwalk park, it's kind of all the same thing. But no, I ate at this nice, formal, sit-down restaurant in the heart of the park. It was really cool. And probably the funniest thing I saw at Gröna Lund was as we were on the way out, we passed this giant pavilion where about 200 people were lined up learning how to salsa dance in the middle of a theme park. And I guess it's a cultural thing because I've never seen anything like that at a theme park in America. I've seen dance parties and even swing dances in there, but I've never seen a giant salsa dancing class in a theme park. It's crazy. It was hilarious. One more thing I want to talk about before I wrap things up, and I don't know if this specifically has to do with the park, maybe it's more so the culture, but as an American, this really threw me off, so I wanted to mention it so that maybe some of those who aren't from Sweden that are visiting won't be caught off guard by this. Gröna Lund has all gender restrooms. That means there is one bathroom, you walk in and you will find male and female guests in there. It really confused me at first because I thought I walked into the wrong restroom. Because upon entering, I saw a woman in there and I ran out and I was like, holy crap, I just ran into the wrong bathroom. But nope, everyone goes into one bathroom and it's actually very convenient. It is stalls only, and the doors go from the floor to the ceiling, so you don't know who is in there. So it did seem a little weird at first because this was my first encounter with it, but I will say I think it was done very well because each stall was almost like its own private cubicle, and there were lots of them. So really the only time that you were interacting with the other gender was as you were washing your hands. So I didn't mind it. I think it's definitely a cultural thing, but it is something that I did want to mention because I think that a lot of people from other countries might not be aware that that is the case here. So to wrap up my review of Gröna Lund, I really enjoyed this place. I think it is a very cool boardwalk park. It probably is my favorite boardwalk park I've ever been to. It's just so unique, so different. I loved the views. I thought it had a great variety of attractions. It was also nice to see that the park had walk-around characters and like street performers. And while I did get kind of confused with the layout because there's just so many pathways and so many rides here and there, I did think it was a little easy to get lost in this park. But because it's not that big, it is also not hard to get unlost, if that makes sense. So do I recommend Gröna Lund? Absolutely. It wasn't my favorite park that I visited. Boardwalk parks are never my personal favorite type of parks to go to, personally. But I think it is definitely worth a stop at some point. Now that being said, if you're going to Sweden and can only go to one park, I'd probably say go to Liseberg or even Kolmarden. But I think if you do what we did and you kind of turn it into a trip and hit all three of them, Gröna Lund complements the others because it's so drastically different. Kolmarden and Gröna Lund, even though they're owned by the same company, are absolutely nothing alike. So if you get the chance to visit, I recommend it. But I would say, if you're from a faraway country such as America, maybe wait a few years once they get their B&M invert, because that does look pretty cool. And I think that will warrant a visit back at some point for me. But that's just my take on Gröna Lund in Stockholm, Sweden. Let me know down in the comments below if you've been here, if you agree with my thoughts, if you think there's anything I missed. You can post all that down below. And of course, hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and stay tuned for more park reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you guys next time.